තරක් නෙමෙයි මම ගැනත් මම බය වෙලා ඉන්නේ.
අපනයන කවුද කරන්නේ? කවුද විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයට ගියද? නේ. කවුද අපේ ව්‍යාපාර කරන්නේ? විශ්වවිද්‍යාලයට ගියද? නේ.
රට නගන ජන පෞර ගම්මැද්දෙන් 2022 අවුරුද්ද සිදු කළ ව්‍යාපෘතිවලින් කිහිපයක්
2022 ජනවාරි 1 වැනිදා
වැලිමඩ බොරලන්ද ගල් ඒදන්ඩ මාර්ගය
2022 ජනවාරි 8 වැනිදා
අනුරාධපුර කඳුරුපිටිය පිරිසිදු පානීය ජල ව්‍යාපෘතිය
2022 ජනවාරි 21 වැනිදා
පොළොන්නරුව උල්කටපොත පිරිසිදු පානීය ජල ව්‍යාපෘතිය
2022 පෙබරවාරි 4 වැනිදා
මහවිලච්චිය පිරිසිදු පානීය ජල ව්‍යාපෘතිය
2022 පෙබරවාරි 17 වැනිදා
අනුරාධපුර කටුවරගාල වැව පිරිසිදු පානීය ජල ව්‍යාපෘතිය ගම්මැද්ද රට නගන ජන පෞර තවදුරටත් ඔබ වෙනුවෙන් ඉදිරියට
About securing your data, there are a lot of data involved in that when it comes to businesses.
People always think about hackers, etc. But I think today it has got a lot more sophisticated than that.
Web designers have to use proper measures to secure the website.
If anyone can make an email with a nice logo and send to you. Proper cyber security policy in Sri Lanka, that's what you're saying.
We do have, but there are gaps.
Biznomics in conversation with Aparajita Aryadasa this Saturday at 5 p.m.
ගම්මැද්ද by the people for the people
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukutali.
And very good evening to you and a warm welcome to Newsline Live. And we are, as we almost always do, broadcasting from the Newsfirst studios in Dawson Street in Colombo. And of course we are the People's Channel. People's First, actually. Now then, Sri Lanka appears to be going further and further into this abyss of despair and helplessness. I couldn't help but notice that despite the fact that we have a prime minister now, not really elected but appointed, the queues for fuel are doing its rounds. In Mount Lavinia, one particular station, it had 2 rounds. You went right round, so it was like 3 deep by the time you came to get your fill. And so it appears to me that there doesn't seem to be any solutions in sight. But we have a guest who may know a thing or two about this sort of thing, because he's a person from a financial background. He's none other than Mr. Eran Wickramaratne from the SJB Member of Parliament too. Very good evening to you, Mr. Wickramaratne.
Good evening, Faraz.
What on earth is happening? Why aren't there any solutions? Why have we got gas queues, petrol queues, diesel queues, fertilizer queues, milk powder shortages, medicinal shortages, and why are we like going around like an international basket case collecting handouts from our neighboring countries? Why?
So primarily for us, we are all focused on our immediate needs, and that's obvious because it impacts day-to-day living. So that is, as you mentioned, the fuel, the gas, the food, the pharmaceuticals, etc.
Well, why can't we buy them?
Yeah, so the reason you can't buy them is because you don't have dollars to buy them.
Yes, but I pay when I go to the pharmacy,
yeah,
and I want my tablets for something called sugar.
Yes.
I just pay my rupees and I get my medicine.
Yes, you're fortunate, and I hope that will continue. That you will continue to get your medicine.
That's only because I get a check from here, you know.
Yes,
So
so you have income in rupees and you can pay and then you get it. But the pharmaceutical company needs to basically, most of the pharmaceuticals, we have some we actually manufacture in this country. Others we have to produce it. We can't produce it here, so we get it from overseas.
So you need dollars.
So you need the foreign currency and the dollars to actually get it. And then you don't have the dollars. Now the other thing is how...
So it's a dollar crisis.
It's a huge dollar crisis because for us now, you may be having an NRFC account or an RFC account.
I have an RFC account.
Okay, you have an RFC account. So
It's
now
got $39 in it.
okay, right. So okay, so if you're $39,000,
39.
right, for us,
$39.
if you
No thousand.
if you were to go and ask the bank to give you that $39, you're not going to get it.
What will I get?
You will be getting a smile from them, and then there is, if you insist, they might give you rupees for it, right? If you insist, otherwise they will say, we just can't give it to you at this moment, maybe come later.
I'm just keeping it to pay my Google bill.
Right, so I think 2 years from now, you'll probably get those dollars in your RFC account. We need to be really realistic about this because it's a dollar crisis. The dollars are not there, and therefore, whatever dollars that they can get their hands on have to be utilized in getting the essentials. And you were talking about the essentials, and those, even to pay for those essentials, it's not possible to do that.
You know, the thing is, we've got about 23, 24 minutes of time left, and the public continuously are messaging me program after program after program saying, we know all this, but what are the solutions? Please tell us what's being done.
Yeah, for us, the issue that we all need to understand, right, that this is not an economic crisis in isolation. I have been saying this for a long time, right, and it is not. This is a crisis of governance, and governance means political and management crisis, which has led to an economic crisis, right, because we handed over, right, government, right, with these dollar balances, $7.6 billion balances. So if you want to really solve this issue for us, the first thing that people are looking for in the markets is confidence. Okay, they're looking for confidence, and they're looking for political stability.
But can I stop you for just one second?
Yeah.
You know, for the last, say, 10 years, 2011, 2021, so 10 years, let's say, how much has been our import bill? $20 billion?
Yes, so if you look at your import bill in 2018, it was about 22 billion. Your import bill in 2019 was 19.9.
So around $20 billion.
Yes. Yes.
So we've had this money in the last 10 years.
Yeah.
But why is it that the bottom seems to have fallen out right now?
Yeah, so that is why you call that it's been a mismanagement, right? And it's all linked for us, right? So you had a budget deficit that has grown. Then you funded it by basically printing rupees, right? And then, right,
but of course the fuel bill is from 3 to 4 billion, it's now 6 billion.
Yeah. The international prices have gone up. That's also all granted. There's no question about it. But I'm talking about domestic policy, wrong exchange rate policy, right? Wrong monetary policy, because you're affected.
Income is about 12 billion. Our remittance is about 3 billion a month.
Yes.
And so we've only got 15. We have just 15 billion.
Yes. So with your with that gap that was there, which was approximately 10, well, with tourism coming in with 3.5 billion, and with the remittances coming 6 billion plus, you generally manage to go forward. So that issue is there. But for us, the fundamental issue now is, right, okay, let's talk about it a bit more specifically, right? So your fuel crisis, right? If I go to the Prime Minister's speech just this week, right, your fuel crisis, the Prime Minister said that he needed about $550 million a month, about $3.3 billion for the 6 months. He said for gas, $250 million. Then he said for fertilizer, a number was not given. but fertilizer was also needed. Then in the speech he said for essential foodstuffs about $150 million. I think some of these numbers are a little on the high side.
Yes,
I think they can be lower. Right,
and in total we need about 5 to 6 billion.
That's right. He said 5 to 6 billion, and that's with about $1 billion to stabilize the rupee. This is what he said, and that is more 6 months number. It's not a 1 year number. So the 1 year number is probably, in his estimation, about 10 billion plus. I would say that probably with about 8, because we're looking at coming out of the crisis, and about 6 billion, 4 billion you will need without the social transfers to the poor, right? And so that is just, you will need that for oil, you will need that for some essential foods, you will need it for some fertilizer, and I'm assuming at this point in time that pharmaceuticals, more or less, right, you probably don't have a big number there. That's assumption after having the Medical Supplies Division, NMRA, and the State Pharmaceutical Corporation come to Parliament and give us explanations. After that only I have arrived at that. So the question is, how do you actually bridge this, right?
But Eran, if I may say this, isn't it absolutely incredible that this Parliament of ours, full of legislators, so full of it, and they speak so eloquently about their ideology and all that. And all these years, they haven't been able to sort out a self-sufficiency in medicines? What on earth have these ministers been doing? Ministers of health, successive ones. One of them even became the president, you know. I mean, what have they been doing? It's a crying shame that we don't even have self-sufficiency in the medicines, for heaven's sake.
Yeah.
Why?
So for us, I don't believe in self-sufficiency. I believe in actually having a policy, right? Of whether it's a food security, it's a medicine security, or pharmaceutical health security. You have to have a policy, and part of that policy, whether it's food or it's pharmaceuticals, it is to do with production. Part of that policy is because you can't economically produce everything in any small country. You see, so you have to look at it. So it's really what you're looking at is food security, health security. Those are like you're looking at defense. You know, you're looking at that, and so part of it will come through local production. Part of it will come through arrangements that you have and you have thought about keeping in place.
And yet billionaires have been created out of supplying the government of Sri Lanka's armed forces with arms, but no factory. We have the world's least used international airport in Mattala, plenty of land surrounding it, and people unemployed, but no pharmaceutical factory.
Yes, so it's interesting that you raised it for us. Now, in the last budget, right? I think that was Mr. Basil Rajapaksa, right? Just look at these numbers. In infrastructure, 604 billion. This was this current year's budget I'm talking about. Social empowerment, 393 billion, which is fine. Defense, 348 billion. 348 billion. Health, 235 billion. Education, 175 billion. But I might add that from the provincial council numbers that will go higher. But this gives you an idea. Agriculture, irrigation and fisheries was about 164 billion. This is to give you an idea. So health and education, where has it gone? So that is why I keep saying, right, yes, we have the immediate need, we have some dollars that we need. How are we going to actually bridge that 4-5 billion? That was one issue. But the more fundamental issues need to be tackled. Otherwise, what's going to happen for us, we are not going to be able to come out of this crisis. We can come out of this crisis in 2 years if we tackle the fundamental issues. If we don't tackle the fundamental issues, this will recur over and over again over a much longer period. So this time, last time when we were in office, we looked at fiscal consolidation as a revenue consolidation. This time we have to look at it not only in revenue, we have to look at it in terms of what are our priorities. And you raised it for us, right? health and education. Human resources need to be the priority. I think this whole idea coming out of this thing is, things like infrastructure, and you mentioned a lot of infrastructure projects. They are not the priority. We have spent debt on long-term infrastructure, no repayments back. That has heightened the debt crisis.
Thank you. Now, let's go for a quick break. I know we started 2 minutes late, but still, we need to take this break. We'll see you on the other side. 30 seconds.
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukutali.
Dhammika Pereira replaces Basil Rajapaksa.
ජාතික ලයිස්තුව ඇතිවෙච්ච පුරප්පාඩුව සඳහා අපි ධම්මික පෙරේරා මහතාගේ නාමය අද ගෙනහැල්ල බාර දුන්නා.
Inter-University Students' Federation tear gassed. Do the backbench parliamentarians of the SLPP not support the 21st Amendment? Is there a dispute between Ranil and Sumandiran? Will the IMF support be given to Sri Lanka?
Newsfirst, Newsline with Faraz Shaukutali.
And welcome back to Newsline Live. I'm in discussion with Mr. Eran Wickramaratne, Member of Parliament from the SJB, and one of three of the SJB who usually talks about the economy and financial matters. Now then, there's a big problem happening as we speak, actually, and that is the need, the state of our state banks, the recapitalization of the state banks. But Eran, we see, and recently we were treated to some unverified information, but never challenged by the bank anyway, and that is the state of the state banks. All these poor loans, bad loans, and they're not even being transferred to non-performing, even though they are clearly non-performing. And that will in turn will affect the capital adequacy ratio of the banks and so on. So we are in a big problem. When is this going to get sorted out? When are these banks going to be the sort of playthings of politicians in power?
Yes, if you heard the Prime Minister this week in Parliament, he said that Ceylon Petroleum Corporation, Ceylon Electricity Board and Sri Lankan Airlines owed the two state banks ₹1 trillion. Yeah. $1 trillion. And also he said that the debt was, in dollars, was about 670 million or thereabouts. These are large numbers. So you're raising a very important question. You also raised the question, Faraz, that about the capitalization of the banks. And you are raising the question post-COVID, right, with all the moratoriums given,
yes,
whether the NPLs are what is reflected now. So obviously the logical conclusion is it's not.
Yeah.
The NPLs are much higher. I mean, that's a common sense conclusion that anybody could come to. In addition to that, for us, we have seen the exchange rate move from 200 to a much higher number, 360, 70, which means it blows the assets of the bank if they have foreign currency lendings, which means generally then the capital requirement goes higher. So I have said this in Parliament, and I say it again, that we need to recapitalize the banks. There is no question about that. The sooner we do it, the better it is, right? The better it is. Now, because often people talk about the crisis and says, let's sell assets and, and often people are talking about physical assets and things like that. No, we have to be more creative than that. We have to create space. So there are ways and means of doing it. Now, on the debt restructuring, right, the discussions at the moment are that people are trying to figure out what is the base of sustainability of debt, right? That's where it is. Sri Lankan Central Bank is trying to work it with the Ministry of Finance. I'm sure the IMF is trying to work it. And then you have to try to figure out, multilaterals you'll have to service, you have the bilaterals, you have the OECD and the Paris Club, and then you have the private creditors. So there's a whole lot of people. And then you have India and China who are not in the Paris Club. So you have to bring India and China somehow or the other to the same terms that you are dealing with the Paris Club. And then we have to deal with the private creditors as well. So, right, it would be normal for you to have some resistance, right? Some resistance. So we'll have to be creative. So one of the things that we will have to look at is we'll have to look at some of this debt, and we will have to somehow or the other figure out ways of converting some of these into much longer tenors. Apart from the standard things that we will do. Standard things are, we need a haircut, we need tenors increase, we need you know, we need to look at you know, how you will get the creditors to give you, you know, some less. So interest rates lowered, haircut, and tenor increase. But I'm saying we'll have to go beyond that. We can look at taking some of these assets, and apart from issuing bonds on them, some of these we may have to actually convert, right, and do debt equity, and some of these assets we can create new vehicles, and we can move them into new vehicles, and we can look at how those vehicles could be floated in the market. So I'm just talking about it generally, and there are a whole lot of things that can be. And I'm saying
that all this can't be done inside 2 years.
No, it can be. It can be. It can be. It can be, because now that you are going to agree with the IMF, you know, the IMF is waiting for our suggested reforms. The IMF will have its own ideas.
Are you suggesting that we haven't given them any suggested reforms yet?
May have done in the last week, right? May have done in the last week. And then we have to agree on it, because before you sign a staff level agreement, and then you have to work on it. So I'm saying, I'm going more into the practical thing and saying that you know, we have to really get people working on it. So the government has got, right, and financial advisor. It has also got its legal advisor in place now. And I think what clearly needs to be done is we need to have our own home team in the Ministry of Finance, basically looking at the details, and I'm sure the advisors and the officials, they are doing this, and I think we'll have to be very creative, and we need to work together. There will have to be a high level of transparency on this, because one of the things that all our creditors are doubtful about is the transparency level. The Prime Minister himself said some of the numbers that are being given, he doesn't think that they are accurate, and there is a confidence issue. We're talking about financial markets. This is a country in which...
But they must be having confidence in this Prime Minister.
This is a country in which, for us, right, on Monday we have the Chief Government Whip convicted by a court in this country and saying that he should be in prison, but they give him a suspended sentence of 5 years, what a 2-year prison sentence. And on Friday, the person he replaced as a chief whip, on Friday the police were looking for him allegedly for instigating violence, allegedly, that's to be proven, right, and they were looking for him, and then yesterday he's taken into custody and then subsequently bailed out. So I mean, these are the frontline people in the government, frontline people.
The imposition of a sentence of 2 years imprisonment, suspended for 5 years, would that automatically preclude him from sitting in Parliament? As a member,
that for us that's a legal question, right? And what I have been told is that if you have served a sentence, you know, actually in prison, apparently you lose your seat. But if you are given a suspended sentence, right, that you don't. So as I said, I'm not a legal expert, but I hope that won't be interpreted as another benefit for politicians and members of Parliament.
Well, I'll be the first to say that it was.
Yeah,
because it appears that way.
Yeah, so people could interpret these things in that particular way.
It's a bit of a silly rule, isn't it? If you have a criminal record of a minimum term and above, you can't contest. But if you are serving and you receive a similar sentence, but it's suspended, you can carry on.
Yes.
What kind of integrity do these people have?
Whatever the kind of the fine lines on the legality, I'm in complete agreement with you. We need a country in which, right, people are law-abiding, and particularly those who are governing are law-abiding, and those who are governing don't have conflicts of interest. We need a country like that. Members of parliament have to declare their assets and liabilities, including those who come newly, right? And they must be made public. Now the law...
I quite agree with you. Why should it be locked up in the Speaker's room or in the President's room?
Yeah.
If you're a cabinet minister.
Yeah.
Why should that be?
I agree with you. So the law doesn't specify that it should be made public. It should be made public.
Yes,
right?
but the law has been drawn up by people who are benefiting from those laws that are being drawn up.
Yes, but I would even go further for us. Apart from making it public, right, there's another issue. The issue is if they are going to serve, right, let's say in cabinet, okay, anyone. This in the past I have said this, I'm saying it now, and it applies to the future. If you're going to serve in cabinet, let's say, and you have commercial interest or business interest, right, then you have to basically declare it and you have to move away from it, right, if you have it, because it's a conflict of interest, because when you are in a cabinet, you are privy to all the insider information and you are the first to know in a cabinet, right? And there have been conflicts of interest. We have had businessmen and others in the past, governments as well, who have had this conflict of interest, and they were never dealt with. Now, in contrast, if you take, for example, in Britain, if you come like that, you can come and sit in parliament. But if you take executive office, generally what they do is they declare it and then they put their interest into a trust, and then they go on the public service route, which is the proper route to go.
Even though that trust may mean that they are the ultimate beneficiary?
Ultimate beneficiaries, yes, of the profits. Like, for example, let's say you have shares, when the profits are declared.
But
and
the
those
buying and
profits
selling thereof?
No, they have nothing to do with the deal.
That's
nothing.
with the trustee?
That's with the trustee. Nothing. They have nothing to do with it.
And can the trustee be a member of the family?
I don't think so, because there may be another conflict there. So I don't think there will be. And generally these are trust companies, right, which are very recognized and professionally and with high integrity that these are given to. And then, I mean, that's the level that is expected. And then if you, let's say somebody like you, let's say you know, you are in the media space, you come into parliament, let's say you write an article to the Guardian, right? Right, and I saw a former British Prime Minister do this, and then the Guardian sends you a check for £200 for the article they got.
I'd charge them $750, but carry on.
Okay, right, then they have something called an interest register in Parliament. Even for a small sum like that, small sum, you declare it publicly in the interest register and said, wrote this article to the Guardian, I received £750 or £250 or whatever, and it's there, and people know that. So you can imagine if it's at that low income level, right, it's at that low income level, and they're concerned about conflicts of interest. In this country, unfortunately, people are not very conscious of it, and therefore it does them a lot of harm. There
was definitely a conflict of interest in the infamous alleged bond scam. We had a Prime Minister. There had to be a conflict of interest. Newsfirst, we said that, but you know, I'm glad you're talking about something, same thing, different territory. But Sri Lanka is known for conflicts of interest. When Mahinda Rajapaksa, as the president, takes his son, who's a mere MP at that time, and sort of parades him around with world leaders, that's a conflict of interest. He ought to have been sort of educating somebody else and giving that person a chance, not taking his own son.
Yes, so conflicts of interest could be political, right? But I'm very concerned about economic and financial conflicts of interest, because it disadvantages a lot of people and the poor. And corruption in Sri Lanka, right, is quite high, right, and it's at many different levels, but unless we set the example at the level of the president and the cabinet, we can't expect much better at the bottom.
Eran Wickramaratne, thank you very much, as usual, for your forthright answers. Thank you. We look forward to seeing you again soon. On that note, it's now time for the primetime news from the Newsfirst team. Take care, have a great evening, and a great weekend when it comes along. And as always, God bless you all.